Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me and everything we do on this channel at Hawk Blogger on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of those places. And it's a special Blue Friday, not only because we have our favorite duo of Dave Boling and Mike Sando here and all sorts of great stuff we're going to get into, but it is a rare double pod Blue Friday. And today, at 4:00 p.m. Pacific time, we'll be doing a in-person live event, live show at the Lowlander Brewing that just opened up where FX McCrory's used to be, across from Lumen Field. So it's brand new, just opened a couple weeks ago. We're excited to team up with them. So come on down. There's a few tickets left. So you can get them at realhawktalklive.eventbrite.com. I'll put the link is in the description of the video. I'll put it in chat as well. And folks, this is gonna be fun. I hope you come. We'll do a little meet and greet after the show ends at 5. We're gonna do some audience participation. So yeah, hope you come down, celebrate Blue Friday, and meet some of the other folks that watch this show. It's a great way to spend your time together. So with that, Mr. Boling,
Yes, sir.
I've got to ask you, there's not a lot of things that make me a little bit jealous of being in the press box for a home game at Lumen Field. But when I heard that you and Mike Sando were going to be sitting next to each other in the press box, I was like, man, I wouldn't have minded being next to you two for that game. What was that like? Kind of reuniting.
I should do a podcast.
Yes.
Get it.
What? Dave, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, right now. We were we were such buddy that we even stood in. It was very cute. We actually stood in line together at the at the barista there at the to get ourselves our drinks. So we pretty much inseparable. It was great. Although we did I think we had some pregame duties. I had some radio and he had the things he does. So we actually did not chow down in the dining room together. That's normally what we would do, but we did not do that.
Yeah. I do the Legends with whatever lounge that is, and we had Jim Zorn. We've had Largent, Kurt Warner in recent weeks. So I don't know who gets into that, but it's a nice thing at the T-Mobile end zone, whatever. But
the convention center. It's
fun with some of those old guys, and they're so good about it too. Some of those veterans that it's very interesting how they have stayed Seahawks, and so many still live around here and are attached to the team. And I think the franchise, the organization, does a good job of keeping those people involved and part of the family, even as they age into their dotage. So.
Yeah,
but the thing I do with Sando whenever we get together, and we do semi-regularly, he is my liaison to 21st century technology. So I say, okay, have you
like
updated your watch?
Wait, no, that was 20th century. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
And those sorts of things. And okay, now what about your phone? Is there any improvements on this I need to get? And
he did ask you that, like, what do you got going technology wise? I was like, I don't know.
Because he would always help me stay abreast, and
wait, Dave. So you're saying that Sando is your personal geek squad? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of.
I was like, hey, Dave, that people haven't used typewriters for years. Let's use this laptop. Here's what you do. It's a similar keyboard. No, you're picturing Dave sitting there in the press box with his old. Where
did he park?
Radio Shack.
Where did he park his carriage? For the game.
But see, I used to, show him what it was like when he got started, and so now it's I have to. It's a little different, and things, you need to stay updated on it, and he's good about this. Although I have to say, when they're lining up for the kickoff, and I said, this Shahid kid is going to really play a big role in this game, and 13 seconds later he was in the end zone.
Wait a second, Sando, I need verification. Is that what happened?
It did happen. No, I tweeted it at the time because he did say it. He turned to me and said it. I mean, it was like just as they were about, and the foot was going to hit ball within 5 seconds.
But it's an obvious point, but
Did you get up and take a bow, or you just
That's normal for him, man, to act like you've been there before, hand the ball to the referee.
Yeah. Sando, so I gotta know. Tell us what's the situation during the game with you guys? Are you constantly going back and forth about what you're seeing? Are you silently just analyzing, and then every once in a while you're sharing notes? Well, what's the interaction for you guys?
I think we're just chatting back and forth when we observe different things. You know,
we watch different parts of the game. Basically,
Yeah.
we focus differently, and then
he watches the lines. You know, more.
Mm-hmm. What do you watch, Mike?
I mean, I watch some of that, but I'll sometimes be watching like the secondary or just think, you know, what's going on back there. And I think Dave sees that stuff too as the play, you know, goes along. But I'll be looking for things like who might be shaken up. Like I was pretty sure at the time when Christian McCaffrey got hurt, you know, and so just those types of things I'm always watching to see, like, you know, what was the impact of that, or who's, you know, doing what. Or I'll watch the sidelines sometimes too. I like to just kind of see, you know, what's going on over there, who's getting ready to come in the game, who's getting yelled at, or whatever, just stuff like that.
It's great they've got the medical tent now, even though we used to be able to observe in real time whether they were looking at so-and-so's ankle or his knee or whatever. And really, that was fairly primitive. I'm surprised it took them so long to come up with the medical tent, because it did feel a little invasive, you know, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people are in real pain or whatever, and somebody's having a concussion,
or they're realizing that their season's over and they need a private moment.
The emotions and all.
Sure.
Oh no, it's bad enough seeing people get carried off or limping off or whatever, and then to see it just didn't. It never seemed right to me. There was just a humanity that was violated there.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna tell you guys that I literally heard from people who listened to our show last week, and they were like, it was 2 a.m. and I was freaking out about this game, and I was listening to Mike Sando on your show, and I was like, he's totally objective about this stuff, and he was so confident. I feel better. So I want you to know you're helping people's mental health, and this game, as much as I think we all felt like the Seahawks had pretty significant advantages going to this game, 41-6 is a little bit of a different kind of beast. So Mike, starting with you, what did you know more about the Seahawks after that game that you didn't know before?
I don't think that was I don't think I did learn a bunch about the game, but the team from the game. I feel like we knew where the 49ers were at, and that it was the end of the road for them, I felt like. And also I felt like the previous game was a 30-3 game.
Yeah.
So I was expecting, I don't know what I said, but probably like 27 or even get into the 30s and then maybe 10, you know, that type of a win. I just thought they were clearly, it would be too hard to come into that environment. I was stressing the environment too. I know these teams have played there before. It's just, I think it's different in the playoffs. I think it's overwhelming. And I think the energy of a team like Seattle that's rested in that situation, I think they have a feel of a little bit of an on a mission type of a team. Like, I just think it's overwhelming. I think the 49ers were happy to be there, and we could see that in their comments. I think you brought it up, Brian. You know, they were like, they were giddy to be there. Oh, I can't believe it. You know, and it was like the Seahawks are like, yeah, you know, we're going to be there next
We're happy
week.
You're here too.
We're happy you're here too. And so, you know, I see some parallels to this game, although I think the Rams are definitely better than the 49ers, and they have you know, I think they're better, but I also feel like, as I wrote last week, you know, since these teams played before, they've traveled 13,500 miles, Seahawks under 6. You know, they've played way more quarters of football with overtime and extra games. They've been all over the place, and they've been barely winning. And the Seahawks have just been taking care of business every single week. So I really love the positions that Seattle's in. I don't think that changed after the last game. I think I would have said Seattle's going to the Super Bowl. I think I did say that, and I feel that way.
Wow.
I think my prediction was vague, but the phrase was they're going to put the wood to them.
Yeah.
Which I was very confident of that. And I feel maybe even more so to some degree.
Really?
this week, as I started looking at, everybody says, oh, their statistics, when they met, the head-to-head is almost identical. Doesn't matter what they were scoring in November and October or whenever they played. It's how they're playing now. And as I went through it, I looked at Shahid's punt return on the game that went overtime. Okay. They were down 30-14.
Mm-hmm.
From that point, at that time, they were playing against a playoff-bound team. Every game they've had since was against a playoff-bound team or a team in the playoffs. They've had 36 possessions. 30 were empty. They've given up 2 touchdowns and 4 field goals.
Wow.
In three full games and 8 minutes and overtime of the first one against the Rams. That's 3 fumbles, 3 interceptions, 12 punts, 8 turnovers on downs, 3 end of halves, and 1 missed field goal. There's been 2 touchdowns and 4 field goals.
8 turnovers on downs. I know we're in the fourth fourth down era, and they've been way ahead, but that's unbelievable to me. That's a lot of turnovers on downs. Great
30
stat, Dave.
30 empty possessions in the last 3 games plus half of a quarter and overtime. That's a dominance. Now, it was that Shahid punt return, and then they come back and score a touchdown and 2-point twice in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are playoff teams they're facing, and they're shutting them down. I just feel like they are on a roll. This is a blue wave. And anything can happen in a game. Somebody gets hurt, whatever. Especially playing at home, I don't see anything knocking them off track. I think they're going to do the same.
Let me ask you guys this, because I love what you're saying. I certainly would love that all to be true, and I can see where there's logic in it. At the same time, like there's a number I loved this week, which I talk about DVOA and Aaron Schatz's number that kind of talks about team strength. This matchup is the best game in the NFL in the last 47 years in terms of the strength of the 2 teams that are playing each other. Last 47 years, playoffs or otherwise. In some ways, this is set up to be the best game we've seen. And with that in mind, if the Seahawks do come in here and play the kind of game you guys are implying and win by some meaningful margin, they don't scrape by.
Double digit.
Would that be the most impressive win in Seahawks history, even more so than the 43-8 against Peyton Manning? And
no way to me. I don't feel that. I don't feel that number at all. Do the second half of the year or something. I just don't feel. I don't even feel. I feel like the Harbaugh Carroll Seattle 49er games will be right there too, don't you, Dave? In terms of the quality of those teams. I mean, you can't tell me guys on that 49er. Let's go man for man. 49er defense. Back then,
Justin Smith and Navarro Bowman
Justin
and Patrick
Smith Justin Smith would be the best player on the Rams defense, correct? Alden Smith might be the best player. I mean, they'd all be in the top 2 players, right? Patrick Willis, would he be the best player on the Rams defense? Navarro Bowman, best player.
Those 2.
Now, don't even talk to me about the secondary with Dante Whitner and Deshaun Goldston, who will knock your teeth out.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I don't see that. I don't feel that.
It's interesting.
I think some of that is muted by the competition that they've had, that playing in this division really has been a mini murderer's row. You got, there's 3 teams that are just so tough and so tight, and you have to be so good. Seattle hasn't always been their best. We're seeing this team at their best, and it's complementary. It's not a new phrase. It's not a new concept. You got to win in all 3 phases and come up with big plays. And your best players have to have their best games. And they have enough guys that maybe JSN doesn't have a big game. Marshawn Lynch didn't always have a big game in the playoffs statistically, but it was important that they were a threat, so that other things could work. I think this offense is meshing so well. Some of the plays in recent weeks, as they have worked with the line, coming out with screens and pulling the line, they have engaged the entire width and depth of the field. They're getting people in the right positions, and they're just very comfortable. They're not making mistakes. It feels like a juggernaut to me.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I also think there was a number that went into the last game that teams with the rest advantage that the Seahawks had going into the game against the 49ers had never lost, I think, in the playoffs or something along those lines. And they still haven't, obviously, after that game. And again, you get a situation, to Mike's point earlier, Seahawks have been able to finally, for the first time all year, actually stay in one place for a while. And they're rested. This is not even that Thursday night game. One of my the listeners brought this up. It was a good point. People forget the last game was a Thursday night game, and the Seahawks were coming off a tough game against the Colts that they barely won, and the Rams are coming off a game against the Lions they barely won. But you have to think Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, the defensive line in general, the big guys, as you know, Dave, like rest is important for those guys, that those guys are more ready for this game than they were for that game. And Mike, that Rams team, they have been struggling. So I guess I have a little hesitation when you talk about the Rams defense and not about Jared Verse and Kobe Turner and Byron Young and
they're really good players.
And the takeaways and the coverage, but I'm listening. I like what I'm hearing.
Well, it was no disrespect to those players. I just think there's Hall of Famers on the, there's just Hall of Famers were on that 49er defense. So
do you remember that play when Navarro Bowman went down by the end zone? And it looked like even Seahawk fans were concerned about him. I mean, that was those guys played with such high intensity.
Yeah, it was ferocious.
Really played the game right, and then the Seahawks had to be their best to win. And I think they're just so loaded now. If you've got line issues, which in health problems, and Charbonnet could, his absence is going to have an effect. But I think we have to see how this goes. And they have done an astoundingly good job of plugging guys in who come in and play standard. They can meet the standard. As they love to say, the standard is the standard, and that's walking the walk that they have done pretty much all the season.
Yeah, on your point that you were getting to on this game, Brian, about the travel, I feel like let's go back to what you said in the last time they played, and the teams were both coming off of difficult games on a short week. I think the Rams are much closer to doing that right now. They just played with less rest, right? They played the night game Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they went overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And then they turned around and they flew back to LA after they just flown to Chicago. And remember, they've flown to Carolina and they've flown to Atlanta and all these places since the teams have played. And Seattle's made trips to the Bay Area, not nearly as long of trips. And so now they are on a short week. The Rams are on a short week again, coming off a barely win game, miracle plays, emotions up and down, incredible play that Caleb Williams made that has never been made almost ever. And you're living and dying on every play. And I think that, you'll spin that positively as being battle tested, but I'm sorry. When you got two championship fighters, I'd much rather be rested and ready to go when I know that I'm good than claim I'm battle tested when I got my nose broken and one rib out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not battle tested. That's not what we're talking about now. These are two good teams. I'd way rather be rested and at home. I think it's just a huge advantage. And if the Rams win, I mean, I think it'll be so impressive. I think it'll be an amazing feat if they can do it based on what they've been doing lately.
They are resilient. They've shown that.
Yeah, they're tough, and they have the better quarterback, and there's a path for them to win the game. To me, there is.
I'm astounded by this conversation. I'm like literally, I'm in the process of writing my tale of the tape that usually is out on Wednesday, but has been leaking later in the week. And I don't see these advantages as clearly as you guys do. I think the rest thing I can definitely get behind, but like if you zoom out, don't get into the details. Generally, what are the top 3 things that decide playoff games in my mind? I'll share, and you guys tell me if you disagree. I think it's quarterback, coach, and pass rush. I think those are the 3 things that most commonly determine the outcome of these games. And I would say coach, I think you could say even. I don't think there's a clear edge one way or another. Both guys have gotten the other a little bit. You can go to pass rush. I would say it's been relatively even. Maybe a little slight edge for the Rams in that regard, since the Seahawks have not yet sacked Matt Stafford, but probably even. And then you get to quarterback, and I don't think there's any question that the Rams have a clear edge at quarterback. Even if Sam Darnold plays well, Matt Stafford is arguably, maybe the best quarterback in the game. So, if you just look at those, that's a lot of games that have been won by those things.
Where's defense and a totally unusual home field advantage?
Those aren't typical.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you have an outlier defense that's a historic defense, that's the ticket for the teams that aren't as good at quarterback. That's always the way that it's been. And that's why if we were doing this exercise going into the Super Bowl against the Broncos, I mean, Peyton Manning and those guys had a way better quarterback and offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the game wasn't even close because you had an outlier defense.
Look at the great Ravens team with Trent Dilfer playing quarterback.
I think we're talking about that type of a defense.
I do too.
I think, and the Rams are a good defense, pass rush, but I don't know that they're a good defense. Do you like their back 7 as much?
I like it taking the ball away.
Certainly from this guy too, this quarterback. So
yeah,
I understand. I don't think I'm missing something here. I mean, we know that Matt Stafford's really good. I don't know that he was really good the first time they played him or when they needed him down the stretch the last however many possessions, and it was really time to hunker down. I don't know what he did. It didn't seem like it very much.
I'm not going to make the Rams case on this show any more than I already have, because I actually like what all the stuff you guys are saying. But I will say this, getting back to the comparison between the Broncos matchup and this one, I do think it would be more impressive if they won in that style against this offense, because going into that Broncos game, that Super Bowl, Peyton Manning and that offense were predicated on underneath crossing patterns. He did not have an arm that could threaten deep. And it was very clear that the Seahawks defense was just going to be able to sit back and then just crush down on anything that came over. And Cam Chancellor did it right away and, knocked Demaryius Thomas on his butt. And that was the case. Like that offense, as good as it was not built to beat that defense. This Rams offense can attack you deep, can attack you in the middle, can attack you wide. It can attack you with the run game. It can attack you with receivers. It can attack you with tight ends. There is not the weakness. And Sean McVay is a million times the play caller and game planner than, oh my gosh, who is Marshall Faulk's buddy who was leading the Adam Gase back then for the Broncos on the offensive coordinator side. So I think this is a much more difficult offense to slow down and stop than that one. And if the Seahawks do that to the fashion you guys are talking about, I think it belongs in the conversation with that game.
You asked the 3 things, and just off the top of my head, I thought ball security, line dominance, and kind of the intangible is mentality. And I think this Seahawks team is not going to get off track. They've proven even in a regular season game, they can be down by 16 with 8 minutes to go and win the game. And I think they have that confidence. What's it, 8 straight and they've won them in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that alone brings so much confidence to this team. The mentality, the frame of mind. I think their helmets are made of steel.
Yeah,
they're riding big black horses, and they're gonna come in, and that's how they view themselves. They are the dark side. They feel like they are imbued with this mentality that they cannot lose. I do believe that. Now, I'm not spending time in the locker room, but just what I see from these guys. And what's the value of that? Huge.
I also think that there's a huge chess match component in the coaching front that Mike McDonald lost in the last game, admittedly. And I think Mike McDonald's biggest problems this year have been when he has tried to do too much for the situation, because he's got a whole nother gear besides even what they're doing. And I think they struggled early in the year at home. And I think some of that was, if you look at their rate of giving up busts, on their defense was higher. Some of that was the communication. I think they've struggled with that sometimes. And he has been up front and said that on that short week, I asked these guys to do too much. And so I think he's very confident in his ability to not do that again. So the Rams having all of that success in the last game, to me, was a chess match loss by McDonald. I don't know that it may have been a win by McVay, but I think that McDonald, if he were being honest, just truth serum at the podium, would say, "Yep, I can't. I want another shot at that game." I think they're going to be a lot better in terms of what they ask their guys to do, probably a little bit simpler in what they ask their guys to do, and that will pay off, and that the Rams will have some success, but not the type of success they had. I mean, they had 500, I know it was overtime, but 580 yards or something. Like, to me, I think this is more likely to be in the low threes than in the high fours or fives in yards for the Rams.
That answers my question. I was going to ask you guys of whether you'd rather be the team that put up the most yards in the history of any offense against a Seahawks defense, which was the Rams with the 580 that they put up, or the defense that gave up the most yards and has a lot of pride to make sure that doesn't happen again. And it sounds like from your perspective, Mike, you'd rather be in the Seahawks situation there.
Well, I just look at the chess match back and forth, and I think last time they played, McVay probably learned, how not to kind of lose structurally to Seattle's defense. They had the advantage, and how to kind of keep Stafford functional. All right. I think that was their takeaway from that game. I think McDonald learned where his defense kind of breaks down when it reaches. Does that make sense? And that his restraint actually can improve the violence of his defense. As much as he wants to do, I think he's one of these guys who, even after a win, like, is cringing if the guys who call the plays around the league know that he got away with something and it was a bad call. I think he's that type of guy.
Yeah, I think that's right.
100%. So I think that last game was probably, he's probably had a couple games this year that really stuck in his craw, and he was embarrassed by himself, where we weren't even talking about the same things. And I think that has to be one of them. And so, to me, what McVay got out of the last game sort of raises their floor. I think what McDonald gets out of it kind of raises Seattle's ceiling. And I think that is why it's an advantage to Seattle this time around, with some caveats. I think, hey, if the Rams get ahead and Seattle's got to throw a little bit, I think not having Zach Charbonnet is a big deal in their pass protection. I do. I think there's some things like that in any one game could make the game hard for Seattle. But we're not trying to find that one outlier path. I'm just looking at the overall macro lessons of the last matchup, and I think Seattle adjusts in a way that helps them more than the Rams adjust in a way that helps them.
I think McDonald has this team at a rare point where he almost doesn't have to coach. He doesn't have to motivate. You look at the things that Leonard Williams is talking about, and the synergy this team has, and how they're coming up with their own nicknames and their own phrases, the mission above bullshit. This stuff isn't coming from the coaching staff. This is internal motivation. And when you're doing it with each other, now this is what the Legion of Boom had. Guys were begging to, your all pro guys were begging to be put on special teams so they could go down and make another big hit. And who can be the first one to make the big hit? And I think once this stuff, it's the causa sui, it generates itself. Woo. That's a rare point where the coach has done his job and the team is taken care of. And where are the best messages? Where do they come from? Internally. And I think the standard is the standard. They're defining the standard and they are elevating it without really even have to get up there and give them a pep talk. This, if anything, it's okay. This is just another game. You may have to calm them down a little bit.
What did you guys think of Ken Walker's performance? And part of the reason I'm asking is, it seems like he is just a different animal. And Mike, I know you asked a question of him in the press conference, and so something about it got your attention. So it feels like something's different.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I think I would bet you confidence is a huge deal for him, just for watching him play across the season, because the talent has been there the whole time. He's super talented. He's quick, man. But I think in the past, the combination of their line issues, their scheme not being quite right, this would be last season especially, messed with him. And I always felt like he had bad vision. You know, when you're watching the game, you can always see more things from the stands or the
sure.
Or, you know, I always be like, no, it was right there. Oh, if you just were to gone there. I always used to feel that with him. And I feel like it felt like it was in his head. So when I was watching him in the press conference, I was just, you know, looking at his kind of demeanor and then pairing that with what I'm seeing on the field, which seems to be total confidence. I feel like he's been released, like he's not nervous about his standing on the team or where his future is or anything but being in. I think he just looks like a guy who feels good about where it's at. And that's a great place to be, especially for a running back. So many things have to come in together, and you're going to have bad carries or you're going to lose, you know, yards sometimes. I feel like he's gotten to a point where any sort of setbacks don't bother him as much, and he's just kind of in a groove and he's seeing it. Do you see that?
I think when he says he's different, you say he's a different animal. He's not. He's that better animal 90% of the time rather than 40% of the time. And I think it was a good point. It's part scheme, part line effectiveness. They are spreading the field for him. They are giving him the ball where he doesn't have to compensate for somebody missing a block, where he can use his natural evasive skills better in open situations. Coaching, yes. Confidence. Remember when they came out and said, look, this is our guy. Kenneth Walker is our number one guy. And almost immediately he took off and he's running decisively without worrying about vision. Plant the foot, dart, use that speed. Yeah,
I want to tap into you on this because they changed running back coaches. You know, Alton's been coaching them, right? And one of the things from the outside that is hard to see is the impact of impact of position coaches. We don't really know. You know, hey Dave, is the receiver coach on the Chiefs part of the reason they haven't developed as much as you think, or is he doing a great job and the personnel department hasn't gotten the right guys? We don't have a great way of answering that. Dave, you have such a great eye for this type of stuff. What difference does it make for a position coach on a running back? Have you noticed any of that type of stuff over the years? You watched the practices and all that.
I think it's cause and effect, and we can't watch teams practice anymore. You can't see that daily interaction between coaches and their players. What we get to see now is what happens on the field. And part of it is the product. Okay, it's a lot better. Why is it better? You do see. I remember one game when we were together on this, and we were talking about Anthony Bradford, who was having some troubles. He was struggling at times. It was obvious, and it looked like I saw it looked like he wasn't looking for work. Sometimes he was kind of standing around. Boy, a lineman can't do that. And I remember saying, I don't know what they're doing in practice. I would think if I were a line coach, I'd tell him, don't come back to the huddle until you plant somebody, hit somebody, touch somebody, make contact and drive his ass. Maybe it's the wrong guy. Maybe it's the wrong direction. Hit somebody. And I think you look at the effort now, and you hear McDonald talk about effort, and the ball rewards effort. And you see that on the defense. They're making these turnovers now because they got 10 guys around the ball. When McCaffrey bobbled that pass, Drake Thomas was right there to get it. Mm-hmm. When Jones and Lawrence are stripping guys, Love and Emmanwori and those guys are there to get the ball. And I think it's sort of the thing. There was a play, and I can't remember what it was, and I wrote my whole column about it, it might have been Saubert catching a short pass or something, and all of a sudden Abe Lucas comes down and just hits that pile like he's a bulldozer. And then pretty soon 4 or 5 other guys were pushing. And I thought, okay, run that video clip in the locker room. This is what we need. This is the kind of effort we need. Snap to the echo of the whistle. Boom, 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 pound them. And they have a much better go pound somebody feeling. Mm-hmm. Now, the defense has got that. Defense in front has got that. The offensive line has developed that. Is it the line coach? I like the line coach, what I've seen of him, and the product has improved so much. And I think, again, protecting and moving the line of scrimmage on both lines is going to be another key to this game.
Yeah, I think everything you guys said is correct. And I think there's a very clear stylistic change in the way Ken Walker is running. Like, all of those things are true, but he would predominantly be a runner that when he got the ball was probing for the maximum return on where he could run the ball. Now, the decisiveness and the aggression, he's attacking. He's not probing. He is causing defenses to react to him instead of vice versa. And so I feel like all of those things combined have made the Seahawks this really very, very late rising rushing team, where it's one of those rare things that happens in the NFL. It literally was only a few weeks ago, talking to Mike McDonald in a press conference, where he said, we were asking about the run game. He's like, it's getting late. We've been talking about this for a long time. It was like getting into the last few games of the season. And now it feels like this is one of the most emerging strengths happening in the playoffs, and teams aren't yet there to really respect it. So coming into this game, one stat I'll give you guys just to be aware of, stuffed rate, which I like to look at in terms of how often you gain 0 or negative yards. Yep. The Seahawks' 2 lowest games in terms of stuffed rate on offense, where the opposing defenses, the 2 best performances on offense, rushing the ball in that regard, both came against this Rams team. The Rams only stuffed Seahawks runs 5.7% the first time and 8% the second time. So I do think that's a really big part of how this game's going to go. And Mike, I think you had something.
Well, one of the questions we had in the beginning of the year, when it was super easy and Darnold would look like an MVP and they were throwing 80-yard touchdown passes over everyone's head, and Greg Olsen was jumping up and down on the broadcast tape booth going, what are these defenses doing? You've got to play the pass defense. And I think then there was a while there when that really hurt Seattle and they didn't really have an answer. And so the question was, okay, could they then run on people, right? Because people don't like the ball going over their head. You have that happen twice in a game against Seattle. With Seattle's defense, you lose the game. Mm-hmm. You just don't have a chance. So, and that's what we've seen in some of these. And so I would love to look at it, but this last game against the 49ers, did they even have many explosive passes? It doesn't feel like it. That's not how they won the game, right?
Mm-mm.
They weren't throwing it over their heads. So they have had the answer of being able to develop a run game when teams aren't going to let them throw it over their head. So I still think it's the best way to play Seattle, probably. Because like I said, if you give up the big plays in the pass game, I think you get blown out.
We'll talk more about this game, but there was also I think a big moment. Maybe it's not, depends on your perspective, but John Schneider was named Executive of the Year by the Pro Football Writers Association. And you guys know that organization well. And this is an honor that has not been bestowed to him before, even though he's had some pretty remarkable off seasons and years. What do you think it was about this particular season that allowed him to finally get that recognition?
I think he's always been a hey, look at me guy, and
he's never been a hey, look at me guy. You mean
he's not? That's what I said. That's what I said.
No, you said the opposite.
He's always been a hey, look at me guy.
He's always not been a hey, look at me guy.
Okay, there you go.
I was like, what?
Totally, from day one.
Yeah.
Hugh Millen asked him, hey, tell us about some of your best personnel moves when you were with the Packers. And he said, hey, brother, we don't do that. And that's kind of always the way it's been. And it's wearing the mechanic shirt at draft day. We're just putting in our work. And I think for 14 years, the Seahawks had one identity, one face of the franchise, and it was Pete. Pete's out there, and he's brilliant in so many ways, and he certainly is telegenic, and he is great presentation in the press conferences, and his clips get played. And as they came together, we always thought there was a senior partner. It was stated that Pete was the guy who had the deciding vote. And I think that works against it. It's like a coordinator who has the head coach call the plays on his side of the ball. Well, he's never going to get that much attention. And sometimes it's hard for him to become a head coach. And I think Schneider has been all about the work, all about the job. There was a number of years that they had fallow drafts. That, who is making these decisions? And a lot of times in those cases, they say, well, John Schneider maybe is the GM. So whose record do those go on? You don't have.
They don't say, hey, actually behind the scenes. Yeah, they don't actually say behind the scenes, the assistant coaches were pushing Pete, and that's why they did it. That's the type of stuff that happens.
That kind of stuff does. And I think it's just so obvious now. And I did a column on this a week ago, I forget now. Try to picture what it was like for John Schneider when he realized, okay, we're kind of a middling team, and usually that keeps somebody's job. We're not moving forward. And the guy that he has worked shoulder to shoulder with for 14 years, who makes that decision? We assume John Schneider had to be a big part of that.
Oh, yeah.
How can you picture the internal debate? I've got to tell Pete Carroll that it's time to go. And to have the Nads to stand up there and make that decision, that really has to be the result of serious soul searching. And the result has been an emphatic victory. And so there it pretty obviously deserved, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is also the best kind of award to win because it's a 2-year award. Sometimes you see the coach of the year is just whoever had the surprising year that year, and then that guy gets fired in a year. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
That happens all the time with coaching. Well, the coaching one is like a reaction to what happened this season. I believe this is a great, if you look at the last few PFWA executives of the year, it's John Schneider, then Brad Holmes, Howie Roseman. Like those are the real guys who have been really building the teams the right way. And we can debate on Howie Roseman, the way they do the cap and all of that. But they've been going to Super Bowls. These are like the teams that really have done it right. And I think John Schneider gets a 2-year deal here where, they've made multiple moves in the last 3 years. The draft day, the in-season trades, unbelievable, right? Even going back to Leonard Williams, but they've made huge impact moves. Then you have, obviously, he sort of did what they did in Buffalo, where it's like, hey, they chose between John Schneider and Pete Carroll. So now, just like Pete Carroll kind of winked, hey, it's on you now. You're in the big chair. Well, yeah, he did that, and it got way better. And at the same time, Pete, not his own fault totally, because no one wins with the Raiders. They've gone through a bunch of coaches. But then Pete falls off the map. At the same time that John is pushing every button right and has this great partnership with Mike Macdonald where it seems real and comfortable. Like, it couldn't be more deserving. It couldn't be more based on the things that really matter. And then, by the way, partly in tandem with your coach who wanted to do this too, you made the moves at quarterback and wide receiver that no one makes. No one makes all these moves. You moved on from Pete. Imagine moving on from Pete Carroll, DK Metcalf, and Geno Smith for, now they knew JSN was going to be good, but you didn't necessarily, from the outside, have just sure bets that you were betting on. They made decisions that transformed the team into a Super Bowl contender, borderline juggernaut. I mean, he better get the award this year.
Yeah. Do you guys, this is probably a question for the off season, but let's take a quick second on this. If the Seahawks do complete what they're trying to do and they get another ring out of this, at what point does John Schneider start become an executive that has Hall of Fame potential? What would be, that would be it?
I would sure think so. Now, I'm a Hall of Fame selector, and I'm very familiar with the processes, and they've made it super difficult to get through from a math standpoint. But I think that, yes, if he has a second, wins another Super Bowl and just has a nice, good run like it looks like he's going to have with this coach, and you start thinking about the number of guys that are going to go into the Hall of Fame that he's associated with for drafting, before. And then you look at what is going on now with the moves. You just have to project out. It's a big if. I don't want people saying Sando's putting Schneider in the Hall of Fame because, that all those things that need to happen. But look at the other GMs that have gotten in. That's what you start to do. And you start to go, okay, Ron Wolf, John's mentor, right? Well, Ron Wolf had a great career, but John Schneider's drafts would blow his out of the water, in my opinion. But if you start looking at who they drafted. So it's not anything I've thought about at all because it's,
sure,
we're not there.
Right.
But if they win the Super Bowl with this, and then I presume you have another successful run with this coach where Mike Macdonald becomes a Ring of Honor type coach for the Seahawks, those types of things happen. I think, you're in that conversation.
All right. So we got about 10 minutes left with you guys.
Hey, wait a minute. How about we look at it? Is he the best general manager they've ever had?
Who would be in the running?
Mike McCormick.
I mean, Randy Mueller had some moments.
Randy
didn't have the exact GM title, but was the de facto GM.
Yeah, and that's why I think.
Well,
and it wasn't that upper level success for. So
it ain't Holmgren. It's not,
So
Russell.
maybe we say right now we can say he's the best GM they've ever had.
I think that's clear.
I think that's clear.
But it's an emphatic statement, though.
Yeah, it is. It is. I find John a fascinating figure in all of this for all the reasons that you mentioned, Mike and Dave, about like how he got to where he got and some of the obfuscation of what was him versus somebody else and all those things. But he's also been a guy that at times, has made some really questionable draft decisions for years on end and had a lot of people in the league like, I don't know about this guy. And now, he's having this year and it's not super surprising. You see some of the national names like, oh yeah, he's recognized as the best personnel person in the entire league. Last year, Howie Roseman was the guy that everyone was feeding. So, I find it just his kind of path through
think,
this to be really fascinating.
You have to be very careful in these types of things because we can now do reverse narratives, and be like, well, actually what happened during those years was, you have success and now your coach, who's a strong personality and feels like he's close, wants pieces, and you're picking late in the draft. And so he wants this certain thing. And I think that has happened to teams. I think it's happened to the Chiefs too at times, where you have this, you're working in partnership with this coach who suddenly has a lot of juice and feels like we got to make that one move. And I think I don't. So, and I actually kind of buy that. I feel like John Schneider kind of has a philosophy that has been, when they have followed it, they have really done well in the drafts. And so you ask, why wouldn't he follow it for some years? And I think the answer is fairly clear. Do you agree? And let me.
I think John has evolved, and I think John has changed his approach. I think that the Pete influence in that is really overstated.
Okay,
I think.
Tell me,
Yeah, I believe, and John's admitted as much, but that they really prioritize need in ways in their draft picks that is not healthy, and they push guys up. There used to be a thing that John would talk about, that there's tiers of players, and we had to get LJ Collier's a great example. We didn't like the guys after him, so we're going to push him up our draft board because we need one of those guys, and you let a much better player overall fall to somebody else because you push need. So I think there's been real errors in how he's gone about that. And I think, to his credit, though, he's been open about it. He's learned from it. And now, I mean, you look at his draft record, not just the last couple of years, the last 4 or 5 years, up against anybody over any 5-year period in the history of the NFL, it's pretty good. Like, it's up there. And I think one of the only other comparison periods of time is his draft record from 2010 to 2012. So, it's pretty rare.
Mike, it's interesting. You mentioned the kind of reverse engineering the narrative, and it's really it's how you look at life is from the end of it backward. And that's how you do it. We've argued, well, what was this? Was this Pete or was this John? And I was looking at Schneider's work, and I thought one of the beautiful things that kind of has gone into the mist of history is when he wrote that personal letter to Doug Baldwin. And now, if you remember what he did, Baldwin got no traction, and John saw what a competitive guy he was, and I can't remember who it was, Greg Bishop maybe, who pulled out that, somehow got a clip of that letter, and he became a person. I'm invested in you. I think you can really be somebody, and you can be a part of our building. We're already upgrading our receiver room, drafting Chris Durham. Okay,
fourth round, I remember.
So that makes me wonder, maybe Pete wanted Chris Durham. He was a tall guy or whatever. It certainly showed that John had the initiative to spot the value of Doug Baldwin, his competitiveness, his talents, and made the effort. A general manager handwriting a note to an undrafted receiver, like several pages, expressing this desire to have that guy, and I see a future for you. He had other options. That's why he came to Seattle and became a great Seahawk, whereas the person that got drafted didn't even make it to the season, right? I don't think he didn't last into camp or into the season.
It did not go well.
So it was funny to see that in the copy of that letter, kind of outlining who was making what decisions. And, you can only do that by looking back at what was happening in that framework. So that was a point that your comment brought up for me.
I love that. And with the last couple of minutes we've got left, I've got a random question to ask you guys. So this is the NFC Championship, in case anyone forgot. And after these games, it's not a normal situation. So if the Seahawks, win, let's just put that, since you guys are painting a pretty good picture there. What's the process like for media? Like, is it going to be, do they do press conferences first and then they do the ceremony? Do they do the ceremony first? Does the press go out in the field for the ceremony? How does that all work?
No,
Used to.
I think you wait for them to do it on the field with, they have the broadcasters, and they assemble that all stuff quickly. Right. And then they do the interview there. And so you would probably do that. Then I think go into the locker room for all that stuff. It happens pretty quick, I believe.
And does the media go on the field for that ceremony part?
That's a great question, because
used to
change. We used to, the way that I would say, I would doubt it, because I would say no. But in the good old days of media, which I mean, really, it's probably not as good as we thought. But like we used to, in the final 5 minutes of the game, especially the final 2, but the final 5 minutes of the game, one of the PR people would come into the press box and say, okay, heading down, if you're going down to the field, because you wanted to be on the field ready to go into the locker room. So then what would happen is, like, you're hopefully not missing something that's happening. And then you get down there and you're standing on the field, and you may or not be able to see anything, but you can sense the excitement of everything. And then as the game ends, you wait for the players and coaches to go off of the field, and then you kind of follow in and get to the press room, and you're ready to go. Now what they do is you don't get to go down on the field at all at the end of the game. And frankly, in Seattle, that's perfectly fine, because they built a great stadium with a direct elevator that goes straight from the press box to that. So you don't need to be down on the field. Some of these older stadiums, like, I mean, Dave's got some great stories, but Candlestick Park, even the coaches, you had to take an elevator, wait for it, and then you would go through the concourse and be walking the opposite way of all the drunk fans. Dave has ones at the LA Coliseum with the Raiders. You're walking through guys who, it's a good thing Dave grew up in Chicago and could take care of himself, because, you saw some stuff, right, Dave?
Yeah. Old Sun Devils Stadium was bad. The Packers situation was go down and around, the other side. It was, they were tough. Well, yeah. But and one time at the Cardinals at Sun Devil Stadium, where you had to walk down through, and the Raiders in the Coliseum too, you had to go down through the crowd. And I remember one guy just really, some drunk, really getting obnoxious, and I needed to stand up for our profession.
Yes, I'm sure you did.
I think it was Todd Fredrickson or one of the Everett guys who was behind me that went, hey, come back. It was kind of, but, some guy's got a snoot full, and all of a sudden he,
There will be a lot of that on Sunday, as this will be the late game, just like like some of the past NFC championships have been in Seattle. So Seahawks fans will get a chance to spend the morning watching football and getting some drinks. And then I will run into you guys after this game, and we'll have a chance to hopefully have some fun conversations afterwards as well. So guys, Dave Boling, what do you have coming up that people should check out?
I think I gave away what I'm writing for Sunday about the dominance in the last 3+ games. That'll be doing. I got a thing on Ernest Jones, the fourth, running this morning.
Love it.
Spokesman review.
And Mr. Sando, how about you?
For me, just look for the Pick Six column on Monday. I'm really looking forward to do that. It's going to be an interesting one to try to finish it writing from the press box. I've never done that before, so it'll be if it doesn't come out on Monday, you know what happened. I just wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, I'll blame Boling. He'll likely be involved in some way, shape, or form. Guys, thank you for a full hour this morning. It was an absolute treat, and see you Sunday at some point. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
All right. That was Dave Boling and Mike Sando. Great stuff from great guys, as always. And before we bring on our next guest, I just want to remind you guys, this is a double pod Blue Friday. So head down to the Lowlander bar just opened across from Lumen Field in the old FX McCrory's spot. We're going to be there today at 4 p.m. Doing a live show. We got the crew from Real Hawk Talk will be there. We'll do a meet and greet afterwards. So tickets are on sale. There's a few left. The link is in the description of this video. It's also pinned to chat, or you can just go to realhawktalklive.eventbrite.com. And my next guest knows a thing or two about live shows, as I think he might have just been doing one in Chicago, if I'm right. Derrik Klassen of the Athletic Football Show. Derrik, man, how are you doing? It's good to see you.
I'm doing good, Brian. I did just do a live show maybe two and a half weeks ago, something like that in Chicago. And this is the first time I've ever done it. So it was like an incredible experience. Have you done any of those before, or is this the first time you're doing it?
We did our first one at least this year in Nashville this year. Okay. And it was an experience. I'm dying to know your reaction, because I found it a really odd sensation to do what we're doing right now. And everyone's just like milling around staring at you. Like no one's moving around. No one's talking to each other, just staring at you, having a conversation. And I'm like, I'm not this entertaining. Like you guys can really just talk amongst yourselves. But they were pretty wrapped in attention.
It was kind of funny being like, wow, people really paid to be here and listen to me talk. That's crazy. I think the most fun part to me was like, when we do like this, or like me and Robert are doing the show and stuff, like everything is recorded and we're all going to throw it up. And it's like part of our living profile as content creators and stuff. The live show isn't, like, at least for us, like we didn't record ours. It's kind of, we're just bullshitting for like an hour. And it was kind of a fun time to like, it was just like a different energy and like a different way that you're doing the show. So it was fantastic.
Well, you guys have been doing an amazing job all year, as you always do. So as a loyal listener, appreciate all your work. And, I got to ask you, man, I mean, this has been a kind of a wild season. And obviously we're going to zoom in on this game, but to be where we are with no Patrick Mahomes, no Josh Allen, no Lamar Jackson, go on down the list. As someone who has QB in your brand, it's got to be a little bit of a surreal situation to have these be the last four teams.
It's insane. I remember, I would have to go find the exact stat, but I remember at some point Aaron Schatz, based on his like DVOA projections, the idea that I think it was the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bengals, and maybe it was one other team, but the idea that all three of those teams would miss the playoffs at the same time in the same season had less than like a 1% chance of happening. Like the idea that all of these teams could flame out was crazy. And I think at least with the Bengals, Joe Burrow gets hurt again, which has been a consistent issue for him. And we all knew the defense would be terrible, right? Like the defense ruining their season doesn't feel that crazy. Right. The Chiefs and the Ravens both flaming out, I think, was completely insane. And so I think we're so used to, Mahomes, like, oh, he can drag them there and it'll be fine. And I just think so many different roster attrition issues finally caught up to them. And I think the defense doesn't really have the same firepower that it's had the past couple of years when the offense had been a little bit more dink and dunk, not as explosive as we were used to. And then the Ravens, I think it's been a little bit under talked about that they were really banged up like early in the year when they were losing a lot of those games. And then obviously by the time everyone else gets healthy for the second half, Lamar Jackson is clearly not healthy for that stretch. And so I think just like a very weird set of circumstances. And then I think if anything, it's more confusing, right? That the last guy in the AFC was Josh Allen and he had this opportunity, and the fact that in that opportunity where nobody is left, he's having to throw to McCole Hardman and Brandon Cooks, like late in games against a really good defense to go win it. Like it's just a very bizarre year. And I think it's obviously unsettling and weird for us. I think we're so used to, especially the AFC. It's like you have these dominant quarterbacks that always get to the championship game. I think it's fun that on both sides of the bracket, like really cool and young and up and coming defenses are really the ones that have kind of led the way. And then obviously Drake May and the Patriots are a little bit of a different consideration, but I think the fact that it's such a defensive fueled field has been really cool.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that's I find kind of interesting about how the tales get told about teams is it's not just whether you are the best team, it's when you are the best team. Like if you took the Bills team from a couple of years ago and you planted them into this playoffs, they're Super Bowl, the Super Bowl. Yeah. This Bills team couldn't defend the run to save its life, had some other issues, you mentioned. If you took probably the Mike McDonald defensive coordinator Ravens from 2023 and you put them into this playoffs, pretty sure they'd probably be going to the Super Bowl. Like, it really matters when you have that team. And so the Seahawks are this, I think, one of the most rare forms of teams, which is one that really was not considered a contender before the season nationally or by odds, like plus 6,000, like really not likely, who now by almost any statistical measure is the best team in football and has a chance to complete this. That doesn't happen very often. So I'm kind of curious your take on how this team was so misjudged, I guess.
I think it comes down to a few factors. I think we all knew the defense would be really good, right? I think you and I talked about it going into the season that we thought the defense would be great. But there is a little bit of a difference of being like, yeah, they'll be a top 5 defense in the league, which I think we all could have predicted, to they are one of the best defenses we've ever seen in the modern era. Like that is a little bit of a different consideration in terms of especially going on a run like this deep into the playoffs. I also think over the last 10 or so years, maybe even longer, we've all come to this idea that having a really good elite defense is great. You still need to have like a really, really, really strong offense to go and actually win the Super Bowl. And you have a couple of exceptions. Like you have obviously the 2015 Broncos, but then again, it's like you have to have an all-time defense to do that. And so I think even in the most optimistic cases for I think a lot of people, the Seahawks offense was probably not ever going to reach that. And I think even over the last couple of months, like as they've petered out a little bit, they are not of that level of a typical Super Bowl caliber offense. But again, in such a weird year where a lot of other teams, especially, I honestly think them playing the Rams is a much scarier game than whoever they're going to have to play out of the AFC. And so if they beat the Rams, like that offense, while imperfect, while having more turnovers than I think you would ascribe to a defensive or an offense of that caliber, the defense is so special that I absolutely think that they can win the Super Bowl. And so, again, I think it's just, we can all say that the Seahawks were going to be a great defense, but actually getting into that 2015 Broncos, Legion of Boom, like 1985 Bears, like that caliber is hard to predict. But once you have it, why would you bet against it? Like I probably take Seahawks in this game, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because the defense is such a special unit.
Well, let's talk about that defense. And, you know, one of the things that's kind of come up that maybe you'll have a different perspective on is, you know, Sean McVay was asked about what makes this a tough defense to go against. And one of the things he said, he went on and on about Mike Macdonald and his vision for players and whether there's jokers in certain places. And then he starts talking about Nick Emmanwori. And he's done a hell of a job basically playing all over. He's an outside linebacker. He's playing safety. He's playing star. He's playing dime money spot. They moved him all around. And they can be a nickel, but they can basically present a bunch of different base structures because of his versatility. And they've got those guys across the front. So a lot of people understand that Nick Emmanwori provides this versatility as a big player who can kind of support against the run, but also is good in coverage, can cover Justin Jefferson apparently, but can also, cover tight ends and such. But I don't know as many people know about how it affects front structures and how that affects how an offense then has to prepare for them. I'm curious if you've got any schematic notes on what the implications are there.
So I think Nick Emmanwori has been a very good, finishing touch to the defense. I don't actually think that he's the most important key that has necessarily unlocked everything. To me, the front structure stuff is actually the way that the front four is built. Like them having long, strong defensive ends, it makes it a lot easier to defend the run out of some of these light boxes. Like Dennis Allen's defenses in New Orleans were built this way with Cam Jordan, Carl Granderson, a lot of those guys. He still just tried to build his defense that way. And with the Bears, obviously the talent's a little bit different. I think the Chargers actually have had success doing this with guys like Khalil Mack, where it's they have these long, strong guys. They can defend the edge by themselves. You don't need as much help. It buys a lot of space for the backers. And then up front, specifically with guys like Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams, because they are playing out of these two high structures so often, you have to do something to game up the run fits, right? You've got to take back a gap somewhere else. You've got to be able to blow up two with one guy, whatever it's going to be. The fact that Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams are so explosive, not just into the backfield, but like if they want to fly across a guard's face, like at the snap and get into that gap and like really pull somebody's attention, they are maybe the best duo in the league at something like that. And so they just mechanically, with their defensive tackles, can always move stuff around and really make things easy. And then with their edges, they really never feel like they have to help out there. Those guys can string out runs pretty consistently. And like it buys time for the rest of the run fit, these deep second and third level fitters to really get in there. And then I would say the other small part of that is like them using Drake Thomas as like an extra fitter on early rundowns, and like blitzing him is also a good way for them to do some of this too high structure stuff. So I think Emmanwori is good for them staying in the personnel packages they always want. So offenses don't feel like, oh, if we get them in base, we can do this to them now. It's like they're always in the same thing, so they can always call whatever. But I really do think it's like the way that the front four is built body type wise that does a lot for them structurally.
Yeah, and you flip sides and you talk about this Rams offense, and I'll tell you, Derek, I'm in an odd spot where I'm like, you got to be like, this Rams offense does not have a weakness, and everyone, including my last guests, Dave Boling and Mike Sando, were like, I mean, they're not playing that well, and the Seahawks defense is on a different level, and a lot of people just very bullish. I look at the Rams offensively the last month, and even like I expected them to roll over Chicago, and even with the weather, and they didn't. And Matt Stafford didn't look quite right, and he has not been doing well when blitzed for whatever reason, and their blitz pickups have been worse, and like Devontae Adams has not looked the same, and frankly Puka Nacua hasn't even been quite the same. I can't quite believe that this Rams offense suddenly is vulnerable. So what are you seeing there, and what are you expecting coming into this one?
I'm also in a weird spot with it too, because I think there is part of me, and I'm sure you feel the same way. There's just like an institutional belief that like Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are going to figure it out. Like they're too good. They've done this too many times, and they did it to the Seahawks not really that long ago in that Thursday night game. And so I get that. The late season skid has been weird. I think the end of the regular season, that was some combination of like, okay, Devontae Adams is out. They just played a couple, like the week 18 didn't really matter for them. Like it was just like kind of a bizarre set of circumstances. The Panthers game, I think, was an interesting one because they obviously struggled with them in week 13 a little bit. They actually were incredible down to down, but they took away some of the shot plays that the Rams really like to take. And I think they did a decent job of that the second time as well. The Bears game, I'm trying to figure out how much I think that matters for a game like this, because on one hand, it's like, oh, the Rams didn't look good. You could blitz the hell out of them. They clearly did not have an answer for a lot of the cover zero stuff that the Bears were doing. That's also just like not how the Seahawks play. Like it would be so off type if they came out with a game plan where they're blitzing 50% of the time. They're doing some of this crazy stuff. Like the Seahawks blitzes are good and they usually get home. And on third down specifically, they actually will cover zero you a little bit, but it's not like they're going into the game plan and on like a 2nd and 9, they're going to cover zero. And so I do wonder how much of that actually matters. I do think even though the week 16 game was not that long ago, and obviously the Rams had really high success in that game, I do think that the way the Seahawks defense has been playing, how healthy they are generally compared to how not healthy the Rams feel. Again, Stafford banged up a little bit with the finger, and also just being, almost 40 years old this deep into the season is tough. The interior of the offensive line, like Kevin Dotson is back. He's not fully healthy, I would imagine. And then Devontae Adams, I think, is the big one. Like you mentioned, he, since the hamstring injury, just hasn't been all that healthy, and he hasn't looked very explosive. And so I think between the 20s, that doesn't worry me that much. Like they have other ways to move the ball, but they've really only scored inside the 10 because Devontae Adams can just beat whoever he wants one-on-one on a goal line fade, quick bullet slant, whatever. I do think if he's not 100%, the Seahawks DBs are more than good enough to actually keep him under wraps.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. We're talking to Derrik Klassen of the Athletic Football Show, and I feel similarly about the Rams offense, and the numbers are even worse there. I mean, they've really fallen off in a lot of ways. This game against the Bears was a little bit step forward, but I look at Kobe Turner and Jared Verse and Byron Young and Poona Ford and even Tyler Davis and Josiah Stewart. I'm like, you can't tell me that that's not a dangerous group. And Nate Landman forcing fumbles. Omar Spates had a great game against the Bears. Kobe Durant can turn the ball over. Cam Kitchens and Cam Curl certainly can turn the ball. Like, I'm not looking at that and being like, this is a weak spot to exploit. I'm looking at, but then I look at how they've performed, and it's not been great, even since they got Quentin Lake back. So, I mean, styles make fights, right? Maybe that's enough. Kobe Turner wreaked havoc on Gray Zabel and Jalen Sundell in the last matchup. Maybe it doesn't matter that he wasn't as impactful against some of these other teams. So, when you look at that Seahawks offense and the Rams defense, where do you see that kind of playing out?
I think in a couple of areas. I think one, the Seahawks offense has been much better at rushing the ball over the last, what would you say, like 6-8 weeks is where they've kind of started to turn it up. And in my mind, a lot of that is just like a lot of the outside zone stuff really coming together. Some of that using the fullback, some of that using just extra tight ends moving across to get some of those moving double teams on the edge. I do think against the Rams specifically, they're kind of pigeonholed into using a lot of the either having the fullback come in helping on the edge or slicing that tight end across and getting extra help on the edge. Because when you watch these last two matchups, anytime they tried to one-on-one these edge players, Jared Verse and Byron Young, whether it was with the tight end or even with the tackles, like Charles Cross did not play very well in a lot of these games. They just can't one-on-one move these guys. And they're going to need that and get some of that perimeter help so that Ken Walker can spring one of these two explosive runs, which they got in the second game and very much did not in the first game. And so I do think that that's going to be a pretty big factor for them. The Sam Darnold of it all, I think, is the most complicating factor here. I think he's been great in a lot of ways this season, but the Rams do actually do a good job of, like, when you get pressure in Sam Darnold's face and kind of disrupt him a little bit, that flash of color can be really disruptive for him. And the Rams do a great job of that. One, because kind of going back to body types up front, they're long and strong, kind of like the Seahawks are. It's a lot of Jared Verse is pushing the pocket. Byron Young is pushing the pocket. Even Josiah Stewart, who you mentioned, I think has had a quietly really nice rookie year. It's guys who can get in Darnold's face and disrupt him and kind of get him to get the ball out maybe quicker than he wants to. And I think the way that the Rams DBs play on the back end, they are not good one-on-one cover guys. They are not good guys running deep down the field. They're not good at taking away in-breakers. But they are good at knowing if the quarterback, if we're playing zone eyes and we're just going to trigger on stuff and play downhill. And they picked off Sam Darnold. Probably 3 or 4 of his interceptions were literally just that, like, ball's going to be out and we're going to drive on it. And so I think trying to disrupt Sam Darnold that way, very similarly, I think is going to work against him. The other note I had, just in terms of disrupting Sam Darnold, the Seahawks and Darnold have not been good against cover 2 this year. Like, he, for whatever reason, has just not been very aggressive. Like, the way to beat cover 2 is, all right, we're either going to pin this one past the pole player, like right up the middle, and try to put a ball like on his back shoulder, or you obviously throw into the honey hole kind of underneath the deep safety over top of the flat player. Darnold just really hasn't done that this year, which is funny because actually the big Cooper Kupp throw at the end of the second game was exactly that. But he really hasn't done that all year. He's thrown very short against cover 2. He's not taking his chances. And so if the Rams just do a lot of that and try to sit on top of him, I do wonder if he gets antsy and just forces a bad one at some point.
Yeah, well, there's kind of been a tale of two seasons for Sam Darnold. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure he was actually one of the best quarterbacks against cover 2 the first 8 to 10 weeks of the season. And he's been one of the worst against it in the last half of the season. And so I think there's obviously different flavors of cover 2 that are out there and different things that people are prioritizing, but it has been different. And it also feels like there's been a conscious decision by the Seahawks coaching staff after the first Rams game. We're not going to put the ball in harm's way the way we were. And they've gone from the worst turnover or second worst turnover margin in the NFL, -7, to after the Rams game having the best turnover margin in the NFL, +7 since that point. So they haven't lost since. They were lost a few earlier, but that offense was a lot more explosive, at least through the air. So I think that's where a lot of people are still remembering what it used to be. But this run game, Derrik, I'm curious your thoughts on you kind of shared a little bit there, but I was struck yesterday at practice again by just how big the Seahawks tight ends are. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they started running the ball better when Eric Saubert came back from injury and when they made a change in the running back room of who was coaching them, Justin Out moving in, Kennedy Palomalu moving out. Both of those things seem to have really keyed a run game that, I mean, it looks significantly different than what it did even like 5-6 weeks ago.
And I think it's a little bit of everything. Like you mentioned Saubert, like because the offense is so we're trying to create these long surfaces with the tight ends and really just spring stuff out to the perimeter, you do need one of those guys who's long and strong the way that Salbert is. And I think the combination of him and Barner has done really well for them. I also think sometimes with these zone-based systems, it seems simple. It's like, oh, you just run one thing all the time. Like it should work. But because you only run one thing, defenses mostly know what's coming. And so it's actually a lot of like the offensive line really has to gel together. And you had a couple of young players working in the lineup, like with Gray Zabel. Like Zabel's been good, but at the end of the day, he's still a rookie and is trying to learn some of the timing with a lot of his guys. And so I think they just needed a little bit of time to gear up. And I think the other thing too, kind of going back to like tale of two seasons with the offense, I think earlier in the season, teams were so focused on knowing that is the structure of the offense. We're going to try to take away the run, really make Sam Darnold throw the ball. And they were just so good at generating explosives. Teams at some point were like, okay, we have to not give them JSN. We have to not give them the explosives and really dedicate a little bit more resources to taking away the pass and making sure that like forcing them to run the ball. But because Ken Walker is so explosive and they've really come along as a run blocking unit, that has actually worked out just fine for Seattle. And so it's funny. For the first like 3 months of the season, we're like, oh, they're explosive because of the pass. And now the offense is still really explosive. It's just they're doing it a little bit differently. And I think while the first version of the offense was more fun, like it's more fun to see JSN make like one-handed catches 50 yards down the sideline. I actually think this like ball control, get a couple of explosives through the ground, like that's actually probably what the team wanted to be when they signed all of these pieces and brought in Clint Kubiak and signed Sam Darnold. And so the fact that to your point, like being the right team at the right time, the fact that this is all realizing at the right time, I do think matters, especially going into this game against the Rams, where really the only thing that kept them out of the first game and made the second game really close was the turnovers. Like otherwise they were moving the ball well and really kept themselves in the game, obviously with the defense at certain points. So if Sam Darnold can only maybe have one instead of like the 3 or 4 that we've had in some of these other games, I do think that goes like a really long way.
All right. Well, I know you like the draft, and we're not going to talk about the upcoming draft. We're going to talk about, I'm going to give you 3 picks, 3 things that if you knew how they were going to go, you would feel like you knew how this game was going to turn out. What are your top 3 picks, criteria, players, aspects of the game that you think are going to determine who wins?
I think one, like kind of like we were just talking about, I do think specifically against base defense, if the Seahawks generate 3 runs of like over 15 yards, that to me is like, okay, they're going to move the ball the way that they want to, kind of keep Sam Darnold's like foot off the pedal and not have to make him do a lot. I think that is probably part of it. On the flip side, if you tell me that like if from the first drive, it is very apparent that the left tackle, whoever it's going to be, is not fully healthy and not really ready for this game, that to me is like, okay, I kind of feel like the Rams are going to be in for it. Not even just because he's going to lose a lot of his one-on-ones, but it just feels like that's really going to hamstring Clint Kubiak in terms of how he can call some of his protections, like what kind of stuff they're trying to get into. And I trust Chris Shula enough to really combat him. And then I would say the last thing is like, if you can guarantee me that somehow, some way, Devontae Adams looks healthier than he has over the last month, I think that would be probably the scare. If I'm the Seahawks defense, that's the thing that scares me the most, because I think they've proven they have answers for a lot of the other stuff that the Rams are doing. But I do think that Stafford-Adams connection in the red zone has kind of been a unbeatable trump card for them in almost every other game this season. And Adams even did get Tariq Woolen at some point in one of those other 2 matchups. And so I think if you can convince me, if you tell me for sure that Devontae Adams is healthy and can be a weapon inside the 10 again, that maybe pushes me a little bit more to Rams. But if he can't, then it's like, I don't know if they can score inside the 10, because in both of the 2 matchups, the Rams trying to run the ball inside the 10, it just like non-starter, completely useless. Like you got your Uchenna Nwosu, DeMarcus Lawrence, like all those DTs, like just not giving them any room. And so I would say those to me are kind of like the 3 factors.
So I was talking to we're talking to Derrik Klassen of the Athletic Football Show, and I asked this question of Boling and Sando before you were on. But Aaron Schatz, who I'm sure you know, father of DVOA, released something saying that this is, by DVOA, the best football game in the last 47 years in terms of 2 teams and their combined DVOA. Like playoffs, regular season, it's that rare. And so you talked about the Seahawks defense not just being a top 5 defense, but maybe being a historically good defense. And we've seen that here in Seattle before, and they kind of stamped it by being historic by beating a Broncos team 43-8 in Super Bowl. If the Seahawks put together a convincing effort against this Rams team, they beat them, where will that stack up for you in terms of impressive outcomes relative to some of the other ones you've seen?
To me, the gold standard, at least in my lifetime, is the 2015 Broncos. Like, that unit was just, I think part of it too is a little bit of like, just in terms of how it was structured. Like, there to me was just a little bit more like pure man-on-man coverage that the Broncos could do. Like, it was just and they blitzed a little bit more. It was just like a different style and different pace. But I do think if the Seahawks go on this run, doing what they did for all of this season, and then let's live in the world where they win the Super Bowl, right? They would have beaten the Rams and probably played an incredible game to keep Stafford quiet, who Stafford is probably going to win the MVP based on everything that we know, and him getting first team All-Pro and all that stuff. I'm going to assume the Patriots beat the Broncos. And so then let's say the Seahawks then beat the Patriots and keep Drake May quiet. They will have ended this run having beaten the 1 and 2 quarterbacks in MVP running in the season. That's like about as good as you can do going into this. And so this, to me, I would say both them and Houston actually, to me, are like, in my mind, some of the best defenses I've ever seen, like what those 2 units did this year. But if the Seahawks were able to finish it off with the Super Bowl, I think maybe the Legion of Boom was cooler, but I actually do think watching some of these units has been more suffocating at times. And so I would say, to me, it probably is like the 2013 Seahawks, 2015 Broncos. And then if this Seahawks team does it, like, that to me is probably like the trio that I would go to.
It's crazy to think about. And so Derek, last thing for you here. How do you see this game? Like, where do you see the advantage with everything you know? How do you think this game's going to play out?
I really do think that because the Seahawks offense has gotten a little bit more into, we can control the ball, we can keep it out of Sam Darnold's hands, I want to pick them. I think because the defense is a really special unit and the Rams offense is not playing quite to their level, I want to pick them. It does concern me, the left tackle stuff. Like, I do think if there's a world where the Seahawks left tackle just immediately does not look good in this game, that could be a big problem with the way that Sam Darnold has had issues before. But there's just the part of me that I've said in a lot of these games where it just comes down to really, really tight, and these 2 teams have played really tight games. I'm just going to default to who I think the best unit is. And to me, that's the Seahawks defense. I kind of think they win an ugly one here. I really do.
Interesting. Well, Derek, tell folks what's coming up from you on the Athletic Football Show.
Yeah, we've got, actually, by the time this is going live, our conference championship preview is up. So we talked about both games there. We went for like over an hour on just the 2 games. So it was obviously great. We'll have obviously a bunch of stuff leading up to the Super Bowl. I am actually going to be paying off a bet on Radio Row because I lost our wins pool thing. So I've got to dress up as a Chiefs super fan because they're the team that screwed me the most.
Like Taylor Swift, you mean?
No, that would be funny. It's to spoil it for the people, I'm going to be a Chiefs-aholic, I believe is going to be what we're going for. So that's going to be what I've got coming up. But otherwise, just kind of pretty standard stuff. I actually had the past couple of videos. We've been, obviously, Robert and I have been doing videos all throughout the season. And so I've got one coming out either later today or early Saturday morning on the Patriots defense and what they've been doing to kind of ramp up over the last 6 weeks. So I would say that's all of what I've got coming up for now through the Super Bowl.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to us, and hopefully I'll be down there on Radio Row, and we'll get a chance to interview the Chiefs super fan if he's around. So
yeah, for your sake, I hope the Seahawks are there and we get to see you.
That'd be great. All right, Derek, thanks so much. Everyone should check him out over at the Athletic Football Show. Thanks, Derek.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, that was Derrik Klassen of the Athletic Football Show. Folks, we're not done. We're not done. We've got another show coming up this afternoon at the Lowlander Brewing. We're going to do a in-person Real Hawk Talk live at 4 o'clock today. It's at Lowlander Brewing down across from Lumen Field, down in the old FX McCrory's building. It's a brand new bar, just opened a couple of weeks ago. And I saw it when we were walking around before the 49ers game last weekend, and it was really cool. And that's how I decided it was a good idea to try to figure out if we could do something together, and they agreed. So tickets are still available. They're going fast. So go to realhawktalklive.eventbrite.com, realhawktalklive.eventbrite.com. Or you can click on the link that's pinned to the chat or in the description of this video, or you can find all the stuff on the profile. We're going to do a little bit of a meet and greet after the show, and we will be live streaming. So hopefully we'll see you guys there, even if you aren't able to attend in person, but really hoping to see you. And I think it'd be great for all of you to get to meet each other as well. And, it's a great way to spend this Blue Friday ahead of a big NFC Championship. So before I let you guys go, I'll just say, I know we got some super chats. I'll get to those. I think my takeaway, I saw it in chat. Everyone's like, oh, Brian's like more negative. I'm not negative. None of this is negative. I think the Seahawks are the best team. I've said I think they're going to win the Super Bowl, all of that. I am hesitant to diminish this Rams team for a couple of reasons. One, because I don't think it's real. I think this is a really, really good team, and they will be really, really hard to beat. Two, if the Seahawks do go out and beat them, let's dream that they beat them by 20 points, or they really beat them badly. It won't be because the Rams are bad. It will be incredibly impressive if the Seahawks do to the Rams what sounds like a lot of the people on the show today think they're going to do. And as I said to start the week, no one will be happier than me if I am wrong and this is a absolute comfortable victory for the Seahawks. Nobody will be happier than me. I don't care about my prior takes. I don't care about that at all. Just give me a Seahawks win and I will be super happy. So it was notable to me how Dave and Mike are generally pretty measured in their analysis, especially Mike. And for them, this is pretty clear. It's not a hard thing to evaluate. And I mean, I'll be publishing my tail of the tape a little bit later, but I mean, as I go through it, it's just usually in these kinds of games, or it's not these kinds, any game, you can say, okay, well, this unit has an advantage over that, like the offense versus their defense, or this coach has this weakness, or this specific player, or this specific position group, the cornerbacks or whatever. And you're like, this is how you're going to win, or this is how they have to come in and exploit things. This is a thing where it's like, you can get down to the run offense versus the run defense for both teams, the pass offense versus the pass defense, the edge rushers versus the tackles, the defensive tackles. You get anywhere you want, and it's not nearly as clear of an advantage as you normally would see in an NFL game. And I think that makes it, in some ways, less concerning, less anxiety provoking, because against the 49ers, if the Seahawks had lost that game, it would have been pretty devastating, because the Seahawks had massive advantages in terms of rest, in terms of health, in terms of team quality and talent, in terms of home field. They had so much going for them. And to lose that game would have been embarrassing, and I think it would have negated a lot of what had been accomplished up until that point this year. This game, I mean, it will be devastating, and if you lose, no matter what, there won't be some situation where they lose by 1 point and you feel like, oh, we had a great run. I mean, we'll celebrate that regardless, but it'll feel devastating. But it will also feel like you lost to a better team. If the Rams win this game, it will be because they are the better team, and you just have to kind of, in some cases, tip your hat and move on. So that's where, for me, this one's a little bit different than how other people see it. But look, I mean, I already picked the Seahawks to win. I picked them to win 30-20. So it wasn't like I picked it to be a total nail biter. But yeah, I will, all the way up until the final whistle, be expecting this to be a very tough game. And you know, I hope it's not, and I hope it's not in the Seahawks' favor. All right, a couple super chats here. This is from Jacoby, says Sunday cannot get here fast enough. Agreed. In some ways, I'm like, take your time. This is a fun part of the year. HDZJ says, love the show, Brian. I love this team. The LB felt like a bunch of Richard Shermans. It's weird, but this team feels like a bunch of Bobby Wagners. It's an interesting point. Yeah, I do. I've talked about the fact that I do think this is a different personality group than that previous Seahawks defense, and lot more chips on the shoulder. You know, everybody's doubting us kind of stuff with that team. This team and this defense is more just like extremely professional and buttoned up and fierce and complete. I think it's smart. It's adaptable. I think all those things are a little bit different between this one and that one. Oh, wow. We've got a bunch of super chats. I don't think I'm going to be able to get all these from Venmo. Venmo.com/Brian-Nemhauser. Let me get to some of these, though. Rob Asgar says, thank you for amazing insights and analysis, Brian. Matt Stafford missed the entire preseason because of his aging back. As he approaches game 20 of his 17th season, wouldn't Occam's razor suggest his recent decline has to do with father time? Actually, this is a great point, Rob, and it's a question that's been like in my head a little bit. Derrik brought it up in this last conversation we were just having. I mean, he's not only older, but he has thrown a lot of passes. And that video that was out there that I showed you guys of Sam Darnold using a Theragun on his right shoulder, his throwing shoulder before practice, you know, last week, you know, shows these quarterbacks, it's a repetitive stress kind of thing to be throwing the football. And so, yeah, like you'd have to think Matt Stafford's probably in worse physical shape than he was to start the year. There's nothing anyone can tell me that's going to make me feel comfortable going into this game. It's just not. All right. Andrew Davis says, I know you don't want to focus on the offseason right now. I don't. Let's see where this goes. But do you think there's any chance we lose any of our vets to retirement, especially if we take home a Lombardi, Big Cat, Tank Lawrence, Jaron Reed, some of the it is a possibility. I've thought about it. DeMarcus Lawrence talked about he already was considering retirement before this opportunity presented itself. Leonard Williams has had some conversations along those lines. There's absolutely a possibility, but let's just wait and see what happens. David Ehrlichman says, here's a tip for HB Ticks. Thanks for all your efforts for this community. Well, thank you, David. Andy Wolverton said, love the atmosphere at the Niners game. The Seahawks staff did a great job on environment, and Lil John and fans showed up to make it electric. Thanks for all you do for the fan base, Brian. Well, this was a really, really generous super chat. Thank you, Andy, for the support. I appreciate you. George Serta. Hey, George, golfing buddy, says for hbtix.com. Not sure how much it costs, but just used it and it worked great. Maybe I'll see you Sunday. Well, we will see about that, George. Robert Sorensen says, Brian, want you to know how much you are appreciated. Little things, little something to help with HB Ticks. Love you, brother. Well, that is really nice of you, Robert. I appreciate you. Steve Maeda says, sold my Seahawks tickets. Thanks for doing this. He says, I couldn't figure out how to get them off the exchange. You have to mark them as sold. But then he comes back with another super chat saying he figured out how to mark them as sold. So yes, if you do sell your tickets, edit your listing and change it to sold so you don't have people continuing to bother you. But Steve, thank you for the very generous super chat. That was nice of you. Sean Broderick says, Brian, thank you for the daily Seahawks content. Been training for a half marathon the last few months, and your pod is my go-to. I save them for runs, and it makes miles fly. Here's to 2 more weeks of content. Go Hawks. Yeah, at least 2 more weeks. And honestly, it's kind of never ending. You guys know that about me. Joey Hamilton says, this is not a super chat, so I will not read that one. I'll look at it later. Mikey says, just wanted to point out to everyone that next year's Super Bowl is being played at SoFi. let's do the funniest thing ever by going back to back and winning in Levi Stadium in the 49ers home field, and then in SoFi, the Rams home field. Got a dark side and 12 greater than 49 t-shirt from Simply Seattle with your code. Yes, HawkBlogger15 still gets you 15% off at Simply Seattle. Get your gear for this game. It's a great place to go for it. Another one from Mikey says, thank you and the rest of the HB crew for making this season so special. And also wanted to thank you for being genuinely good human being. Well, that was very nice. From your generous donations to the community, HB Ticks to help the 12s and team, the world is a better place because of you. Go Hawks. Wow, Mikey. That was very nice, man. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you guys taking the time and spending some money to say that stuff. It really does matter. Donna Burton says, thanks for everything you do for the 12s. You have no idea what it means to people who live far from Seattle. You know, it makes me happy. I mean, that's why I started this. It is why I started it. Initially, when I started the blog, it was because I was looking for community and connection around the Seahawks because no one in my family cared and no one at my office cared. But a big part of why I started the HB Mornings thing last year was, you know, I wanted good Seahawks talk in the morning for a jog or for a workout or for a commute. And they're just, for me, it was like, you know, people would talk about all sorts of different things, which is fine. And I'm really glad that what I wanted is what other people want and that they're finding value in what we're doing. And I really do hope you take the time to come and see us live tonight, realhawktalklive.eventbrite.com. We'll see how many people. I think there'll probably be 100 or so folks. I don't know how many will end up showing up, but I think it's going to be a really good showing. It's going to be a great location, and you're going to be right next to the stadium. Like it's a perfect spot to spend this evening hanging out with Seahawks fans, you know, talking football and feeling the energy of like Lumen Field. Like you'll get some good pictures just to remind you of what's to come in a few days. All right, everybody, that'll do it for this episode. Have a great rest of your Friday. I will be heading to the VMAC in a little bit to get final injury reports, and I will let you know what comes of it. So until then, we will have a Seahawks Saturday tomorrow with Jeff Simmons. We'll have hopefully our favorite segment of Jeff's Twitter Patrol. So that'll be fun, and we'll talk to you then. Take care.